Okay, I believe we are on. Okay, Malik, we are now live on YouTube. Okay.
I know, Emmy.
Hey, Malik. All right, so we're gonna get started in just a moment here. I'm gonna pull up my YouTube and just make sure that we are actually live. This allows us to see the chat. All right, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect, yes. Okay, so we are live, you all. It is Wednesday. It is our Wednesday live leadership chat. I am so honored to have our co-host today, Dr. Malik Smalls, who is a dope middle school principal in New York, doing some amazing and incredible work. Malik, thank you so much for being here today and taking the time.
No, Emmy, for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So we're going to start off with, there's some people who are tapping in. If you are tapping in and you are watching right now, go ahead and put in the chat where you're tapping in from, what city are you representing, and while you're doing that, I just think it's super cool. I want to share some cool facts that we always do with our speakers initially. So just some things behind the leader himself, Dr. Malik Smalls. He is a twin. So for those of you who may know him, who may be tapping in, you may know that, you may not. I learned all of this new information. He is also a DJ, loves music. His hype song, or one of his hype songs, is Nas. Is it Ultra Black?
Yep.
Ultra Black. Yeah. And he loves food and traveling. If you go check out his profile on Instagram, is your handle on Instagram, is it Dr. Malik Smalls?
Dr. Malik Andrew Small.
Dr. Malik Andrew Smalls. Drop it in the chat as well. Go follow him. You've been doing some amazing work. Go ahead and just take this moment. I want to take this moment to just allow you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your leadership journey.
Well, hello, Dr. Malik Andrew Small. Andrew was my great-grandfather, so I always have to honor him in my name. That's why I always spell out the full name. Been in education for about 20 years. I was a career changer, came into education as a teaching fellow some time ago. Started out as a teaching fellow in district schools in the South Bronx, then went from there. I taught for about 4.5 years before going into leadership. And in retrospect, I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have stayed in the classroom longer, but it all worked out. And so I left there, spent time in leadership in charter, and then from charter in the Bronx, I went to East New York as a principal. So I've been in leadership for decade and a half. It goes by really fast. I had to think about that. But what I will say is I have a great depth and breadth of experience as a teacher. I was in one of only 2 middle schools during the Giuliani era that was designated an impact school. And what that meant was we had armed police in riot gear in our schools. And so I went from that, stayed in the same school as it closed down and reopened, it became an A school. So just that gives me, affords me a great deal of experience going from a school that's in crisis to a school that flourished. And then additionally, having spent time in charter school as well as district, and spending time in charter back when Joel Klein was chancellor, I just have, I'm just fortunate that I have a lot of rich experience in both the district and the charter side. And it's been a great ride. I love it. I enjoy it. It's, you know, what drives and motivates me every day. Love children. I love team building. And I love leadership, and I love mentorship.
I love it. Obviously, you have done the turnaround work. I heard you say you took a school all the way to A status, which really, if you know, if you're watching us right now and you have personally or are currently going through that huge season of crisis change management, make sure that you tap into leaders and connect to leaders like Dr. Malik Smalls. That is amazing. I'm super excited also to tap into this this is a real case study. It actually did hit the media. And I know that as school leaders, you know, that's sometimes the realities that we live in, right? And so the purpose of us doing these live leadership chats is really grounded in being able to provide a space of authentic leaders, where authentic, real leaders show up to address real scenarios and real situations. And I can't tell you, Dr. Smalls, how many leaders have said, hey, I remember that one day that you were talking about this one thing. I've had people pull out notebooks and said, this is what I wrote down and this is what I went and did. And so, you know, sometimes we never know who we're helping, but we do know that this work is absolutely needed. There's not enough of it. So let's jump into the case study. I actually was able to pull it up, so I'll go ahead and read it, and then I'll just kind of tag you in here. So here's a real case study. You are a school principal, and one of these students in your building messages their teacher about their schedule in the midst of this pandemic. The teacher responds with the answer of when the student should report to school and responds with, your mom is crazy, so I get it. The parent ends up reading this text that the student saw, reaches out to the teacher, and in a conversation with the teacher completely denies the text. By the way, you're the school principal and you know nothing about this interaction that is happening, other than the parent ends up going to the local news station. The story is picked up and it is aired on on the 5 p.m. news that evening. As a school principal, you find out about when it airs, okay? Like, you don't know until 6 p.m. that night. And the way you find out is by hearing it on the news. So how should the school principal approach this? Would love to unpack just more immediately, like, what are some of the key immediate actions or things that you would be thinking about as a school principal and immediate actions you would take? And I'd love to bounce back and forth with that with you.
Now, see, this is a loaded case study, and I'm glad you threw in the fact that it was a text message, because that actually changes the response, because it's all very situational. So this was around 6 o'clock. I saw it. So the first thing I do, I have to grab a glass of wine and not panic, right? So
love it.
Wine. I make sure not to panic. In New York City, when you have anything having to do, anything that hits the press, in New York City, fortunately, we have a press office that deals with the media portion of it. So we never have to deal with the media directly. So, but I don't know whether that's unique to New York, but that's certainly a luxury that we enjoy in New York. But first things first, because it was in writing, you really have to understand, and this is very apropos right now in this remote learning environment, because teachers have had to really change their approach, because there are things that you can say and do in person that you certainly can't say and do on camera or in writing. And so, rule of thumb, don't put it in writing, and don't put anything in writing that you're not comfortable seeing on the front page of a newspaper.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's rule of thumb, because once it's in writing, it really necessitates a very particular response. So again, first of all, when I look at the case study, there's some nuances in it. I got to first ask myself, okay, before jumping the gun and calling the teacher in for disciplinary or things of that nature, you know, I really have to sit down with that teacher and get the teacher's side, get the context, because context is really important. The why is also as important as the actual thing that happened. But there will be a level of, I hate to use the word consequence, but there will be a level of consequence and recourse because it was in writing.
Yeah. Let's take like a pause right here, because I heard you say a few things and I want to make sure that we like fully dissect that for the people watching this, because I do believe that there are districts that have a press office, and there are also districts that do not have the luxury of a press office or a person that, you know, you go to for the press or that speaks on your behalf. So what I heard you say, what was clear though, is that you would not have, as a school principal, any direct access with the media. I absolutely agree with you. As a school principal, your job is not to go back and forth with the media. That is not that's not where your fires are, and that's not where you need to be doing your digging and your research. I heard you talk a little bit about this, and this is really key too, particularly in this remote world, you know, being very conscious of how we are communicating and what we are communicating, specifically when it is in writing. And Wanda, now, if you're unsure about your message or how you should be framing something, ask someone, right? Like ask a colleague, go to someone and make sure that your message is on point, that it is not offensive, that it is getting to the heart of the matter and the heart of the work. To your point, you shouldn't be writing anything. I heard you say, hey, we shouldn't be writing anything that we wouldn't want on the front page of a newspaper. I would also add, you shouldn't be saying anything that you don't want on the front page of the newspaper, whether or not the parent is there or not. Like I always tell people, and listen, I'm guilty of it. Like early on in my career, I did stuff where it was like, you know, would I have said this if the parent was here? And maybe not, you know, and over time, you just learn to just make sure that that the way you are treating your kids is the same way that if that parent were right there, you'd be treating them. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, but the three more considerations I'm gonna throw in. Again, number one, when teachers are working with students, a lot of time, you know, it has to do with relationships. It has to
Yeah.
do with the relationships that the teacher has with the students, as well as the parents, as well as the community. And then also they have to understand colloquialism, right? And so that brings me back to intent. What was the intent of the statement? Was
Yeah.
the statement colloquial, or was it exactly how she said it? And then the other major piece is the cultural nuances, right? Because you can read that statement any number of different ways, depending on whether you read it with a sister girl intonation, or whether you read it with a sarcastic intonation, etc. And so again, when you're putting things in writing and when you're working virtually, a lot of times teachers don't keep that in mind, how it was intended. You know, was it intended colloquially because I have a relationship with that student?
That's real.
Was it something that resonated because culturally that's how we communicate? So it gets really interesting, and so that's why you really have to take the time to unpack the intent with the teacher, and then ultimately with the parent and the student, to ensure that the intent wasn't something that was malicious or something that was culturally insensitive.
Yeah, I love that you named that, the relationships piece, right? Because sometimes you do have relationships. Some of your students, a lot of teachers are kind of like a parent, you know, or an auntie or an uncle to them, and so there is a
As they should
relational
be.
thing. I'm sorry.
I said, as they should be.
As they should be, exactly. I think where this teacher went wrong, however, is right that again, I think there's some underlying things here where when the parent does address you, that is the opportunity. Just according to this, we haven't dug into what their teacher says or anything like that. But according to this, the teacher denies it. Like, no, I never wrote that. And so that right there is where it's in writing, you know, and that's an opportunity for you to like own it and say, listen, you know what? I absolutely didn't mean it like that. You know, I actually do whatever it is, that apologies that need to happen, there should be ownership there.
Right, because then you step into another bucket, which has to do with professional responsibility.
Exactly. Yep.
If you wrote it, own it, and then state your case.
That's
You
right.
know, I as a principal, found myself in a precarious situation with something I said to a student that had a particular intent, but when the mother heard about it, she called up superintendent. Hey, Principal Smalls said this, and you know, I ended up in a disciplinary, but the intent was pure. The intent was the right intent.
Yeah.
Again, because we're not only teachers, but we're role models, and we're all of those other things. You know, you have to find that balance where you're able to be relatable and where you're able to be culturally responsive, but yet still understand that we wear a certain, we're held in a certain regard and certain esteem, and there's certain places that we have to remain in, certain places that we can't kind of go or we shouldn't go as professionals.
Yeah. I love it. So let's go back to the what you said. It sounded like your first step would be, you talked a little bit about your thought process. It sounds like your first step would be to go to the teacher directly first.
Wine was the first step.
Oh, wine was the first, y'all get it right. Wine is the first step. So make sure that you're level-headed, clear, calm, collected.
Wine at night, then we go to the teacher the next day. Okay.
Right, because it's the evening, y'all. Make sure
you gotta clarify that.
We keep this in context, all right? It is nighttime. You're, as a school principal, you are already home, okay? And you're dealing with this from the comfort of or not comfort, discomfort of your own home.
Right.
And so you would go to the teacher. Before we keep going here, I would love to hear from the people in the chat. Drop in the chat, who would you go to first? What would be your first action step in this case study? Would love to hear it. Let's see if we get some people tapping in there. You said the teacher. Can you talk about why you would go to the teacher first?
So procedurally, just, to be 100% realistic, procedurally, because if this is becomes a case where I have to make a determination, then I have a secondary person that's going to investigate it, right? And so the investigation involves getting all sides of the story. So I would want the teacher first to give me a written statement before we even engage in conversation, get written statements from students, get statements from parents. So because it's very important that you collect all of the information as well as any proof. And so if there's proof of the text message, make sure that's obtained also. And then once you have all of the information, then you're able to have an informed discussion. And so once all of the information or the data has been collected, then I would have conversations with the teacher.
Cool. So I'm hearing you say collect all the data first, collect the written statement of what happened, a copy of the text message. As we're thinking about this night, let's take it back to this night. It's 5 p.m., 6 p.m. It is aired on the news. You're finding out. So you would go directly, or you would tap into that teacher before you even speak to them and say, hey, could you write a written statement on what transpired? And can you send that to me? Okay.
Right, and I wouldn't even specify what something occurred. If you're aware of something that occurred, could you please, give me a written statement? Just leave it very open because you don't want to prejudice the state or anything like that.
Yes, or accuse, right? Like be leading and accusing someone. Right. I love that. I would do that as well. I would text message them like, hey, I want to connect with you in a moment. Before we connect, I probably would say, hey, could you write a written statement, just email me quickly, any interaction that you had with this particular parent. Could you describe your last interaction with that parent? That's how I would lead it. Because sometimes also if you leave it too open-ended, they're like, what are they talking about? I don't know. And then you just,
Right.
So I would also, for me as a school principal, so back up, would you ask for your student statements and all of that same night? Or is that something that you would like hold off till the morning?
I would honestly hold off until the morning.
Yeah.
I think it's, you have to give things space, right? You don't want people to respond in an excited state or anything like that. I would hold off in the morning, but the other reason I would hold off in the morning because I'm respectful of people's time and respectful of people's home life. And so what happens at work should be dealt with at work.
Yeah, that's good. I love that you have that philosophy, and it shows in your decision making and how you would make that decision. When we think about like the next step, like me finding out on the news, oh shoot, my school is on the news, my teacher's on the news, I'm contacting this teacher. The next step that I would do is I would probably contact my superintendent, right? Or whomever is like above me, because they just need to know, one, what's happening, two, that I'm on it, right? That we're just not doing anything about it. Hey, so-and-so, this was brought to my attention. It is on the 6 p.m. news. Here's my course of action. Is there anything else that you like, that I should be thinking about? Getting an outside ear or whatever. Right. What are your thoughts on that? And would you like adjust or add?
No, great superintendents are going to reach out to me even before I get to them. But certainly, you want to make sure that you're looping in your superintendent, because what happens to one principal, it's a reflection of the entire district. And so you want to make sure that there's a team effort dealing with this and any similar circumstances. So you want to loop in superintendent. You want, like I said, in New York City, you want to loop in the press office. You also want to loop in your parent coordinator or whatever members of the staff have a relationship with that parent, to make sure that when we do sit at the table, that there are a number of people at the table that can kind of manage any passionate discussions or things of that nature.
I really love that you said that. The parent coordinator, tapping into your resource. If you have a parent coordinator at your school, critical, particularly either parent coordinator or even a teacher who has a really good relationship with that parent, right? Would you call that parent that evening? Would you meet with them the next morning? How would you approach that?
The parent I would reach out to that evening. And so again, the people that I would reach out to in the evening time would be my parent coordinator and the parent, right? The teacher I wouldn't approach until the next day, but certainly the parent coordinator. My parent coordinator is on call until 10 p.m. every night. And so it's very realistic that I would reach out to her. And again, just to your parent coordinator, if your parent coordinator is doing a great job, manages those relationships and really brokers the relationships between the school admin team and the community.
That's good. I love it. So we talked about what we would do that evening. Contact the teacher via writing, text, whatever, request a written statement, call your superintendent, call your parent coordinator, call your parent, and then the next morning. Is there anything else you would do that night? And then walk us through that very next morning. What would you do?
Again, the next morning, I would immediately have the teacher in for a conversation, but again, not an accusatory conversation, and a conversation where I'm able to kind of really gather what was the intent, right? Because no matter which way you slice and dice it, it was inappropriate to write that, right? But again, it's just like, when you think criminality, you're always thinking mens rea, you're thinking intent. So really getting behind the intent of the interaction, and then going from intent to, okay, how do we move forward and ensure that we can have a conversation with the parent and find some resolution. And so, at that point, it then I look at my parents and my clients, right? And so at the end of the day, whatever the client requests, I'm going to have to, do my best to meet the requests of that client. So
I love the way you look at that as well. I look at parents as clients and also look at students as our clients as well, right?
I'm going to tell you, so before I got into education, I worked in the financial world, right? And so again, my paradigm is parents as clients, students as investments, right? And so your clients give you their most important assets with the expectation that you'll give them a return on investment. And where there isn't a return on investment, they're responsible
yes.
for that loss. And so that's kind of my paradigm when I think about the school business.
Malik, that is a whole quote, a meme, a quote from you. Like that has to go on your Instagram profile somewhere, or in you make sure we flag that, because that's dope. I never thought about it in that way.
Right. Just saying you want your investment to grow. Your children are your number one investment.
ROI.
And it's the expectation that you have a great rate of return by the time they graduate. Heck, you want a great rate of return at the end of every week and every month, so that's how I see it.
I love it. Okay, so we talked about you meeting with the teacher the very next morning in person, not accusatory, more of a what happened conversation.
Exploratory,
absolutely, conversation.
right.
And so let's say that the intent, they didn't mean any harm behind it. What would you do?
Well, you still have to deal with the fact that it was irresponsible. And professionally, it wasn't necessarily conduct becoming of a professional. But see, again, what happens next really has to do with intent, right? And it also has to do with how you made the child feel, and it also it has there's so many factors, right? There's so much this gray area, again, depending on, is very situational. Because if you have a teacher that's consistently irresponsible around communication and consistently irresponsible around how they deal with being culturally responsive and things of that nature, then that's an issue. But if it's an honest miscommunication, if it's an honest misstep, and then also you want to look at where the teacher is along the continuum of their career. If they're a new teacher, it's one conversation. If you're 10 years in, it's a different conversation. So again, it's very situational.
Yeah, yeah. So, a lot of people, most people would probably move to some sort of disciplinary action, right? Like a write-up, a written warning, the parent might be pushing for something. And obviously we can never really disclose the personnel matters, HR matters with anyone other than that person. How would you so like I'm thinking about restoring the relationship between the teacher and the parent. How would you approach that in making sure that happens? If yeah, let's hear it.
I'm glad you said that. Again, as a principal, one of the philosophies that I really subscribe to is that of restorative practices, right? And so in this case, your parent is the victim, right? The parent feels victimized, right? And the teacher is the aggressor. And so being able to bring the two together, having the teacher really understand whether you like it or not, you need to hear this parent out. You need to listen to the parent and find out what it was, what the grievance really is, right? And then after you're able to really listen to that parent and their grievance and empathize with that parent and their grievance, then we can kind of move to what your intent was. But again, you got to get the victim. It's about how that person felt. And that person, the parent, felt victimized by that statement. And so really dealing with the parent, how the parent felt, and so forth and so on. And then having the two try to find some middle ground and some resolution around repairing the relationship.
Absolutely. I love that we're going through
written notification. Even with written notification, there's a spectrum, right? And so there has and necessitates some level of written notification, but what that looks like, again, is gonna be in large part will be about what that meeting between the teacher and the parent looked like. And so
I think
if you're a smart teacher, and I've had this situation 100 times, if you're a smart teacher, close your mouth, listen to the parent, let the parent get it off their chest, feel what they're saying, right? Empathize with what they're saying. And it better be an apology in there somewhere.
Yeah. Oftentimes in this work, we teachers, leaders, we bring our hearts to the work. We lead with our hearts. And oftentimes these are situations where we take things personal, right? I love what you said about censoring the parent as the victim, restoring, repairing, working towards repairing the relationship. I would just add that for leaders in particular, sometimes we have to have a pre-meeting before the real meeting. You got what I'm saying? Like before the teacher and the parent walk in, sometimes we have to help unpack that for teachers.
No, not sometimes, all the time. You
All
want
the time, right?
that pre-work with the parent. You want to meet the parent first, because ultimately, whether or not the teacher said it or not, ultimately that parent's still holding the principal responsible.
That's right. That's right.
Ultimately, that school leader guy still has to eat it. So you got to do the work with the parent first, do it with the teacher separately, and then when the parent is ready, not the teacher, when the parent is ready, because it's the parent who's in the position of victim here. If and when the parent is ready to meet with the teacher, at that point, then we meet. But the parent may not even be interested, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
Because it's them that felt they were under attack.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate you saying that. That's good. So another thing that where we often go, and this is also how our educational system has really been built as it relates to discipline, and it's the way we discipline adults, is the punitive, right? We go straight to the write-up. Oh, this person's going to get written up. right? We make all these assumptions, we write them up, and then that's it. And there's never anything that happens after that for a lot of school districts, both in and outside of education. And something key that we just spoke about and that Malik, you elevated, is the need to move to restorative, high accountability and high support at the same time. Absolutely. One is not separate versus the other. If you go too supportive, that sounds like, hey, you shouldn't do that anymore, and then nothing.
I gotta tell you, as a school leader, again, I don't even use the term discipline because I don't believe in it.
Oh, right? Say a little bit more on that.
There's no need for children, in my eyes, to be disciplined, because the decisions that they make are decisions coming from a mind that isn't even developed enough to understand fully the right and wrong of it. And so every opportunity is an opportunity for children to learn. Every transgression is an opportunity for students to, if you're doing it right, is an opportunity to point out and recognize and be reflective on the transgression, and then put the wheels in motion to create opportunities for them to give back to the school community what they've taken away from the school community through their actions, and to hopefully, when they find themselves in a same or similar situation, be able to make a better decision. And that's what it should look like. It shouldn't be about discipline, because we're not in the prison business, we're not in the policing business, we're in the education business. So every opportunity to address what we perceive as quote unquote bad behavior really is, we should look at it through the lens of doctors who are diagnosing symptoms and try to figure out, okay, what kind of led to you making that decision, and let's reflect on it, and let's figure out how, if you're put in a similar or same situation, you can make a better decision. And so that's what it looks like for me and my team at my school. I don't believe in discipline.
That's right. Wow, y'all, bars. Dr. Malik Smalls, thank you. Like, this has been so incredible and amazing and empowering. And I love how you just walked us through just the whole process of what you would do first, what you would do next, why, the restorative part. Is there anything else that you would add to what we've shared around this case study?
Yes, children and parents both need hugs, right? Give them a lot of hugs. A lot of love, a lot of hugs. If the work that you do is based in love, shout out to Principal Akbar Cook, whose new book is coming out soon. And love is the key word in the title. Shout out to OSG. Lead with love. Do everything that you do with children and with parents and communities should come from the standpoint of love. I tell each and every one of my teachers and my parents, when they come into the school, once you come into the school, you're family. We may not always agree, but if you're walking unhappy, I guarantee it's my job to make sure that you leave out happy. And as a teacher, if you're not willing to take on the mindset and the role that you are a parent to the children from the time from 8 to the time the children leave, a surrogate parent, if that's not your philosophy, you should probably work somewhere else, because you won't be happy here. So,
listen, drop a fire in the chat if you're hearing this. Drop some love, because these are the types of teachers and leaders that we need in our schools right now, particularly in this season.
And I also let them know UPS is hiring.
UPS and a few others, and honestly, that's part of, for me, I've had to coach people out of the profession, and there's no hard feelings. It's, hey, let me help you find something that makes you feel alive.
Right, because you can't hurt our babies, and you can't disrespect these communities that we serve.
That's right. Wow. I'm just so honored to have had you on this live leadership chat. You have so much wealth of knowledge, of expertise that you bring to the table. You are obviously doing the work. You are changing lives, transforming communities that will never be the same because of the work that you do. And sometimes we just do what we do, and we really don't think about the impact, or how, what we did actually affected not just that one child, but that whole family, right? And how generations to come will be different. And I just want you to know that you're doing that work, and I'm honored to have you on here, and continue to walk in your power and in your truth.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And again, I reiterate, we're not just servicing children, we're servicing children, families, and communities. You separate one from the other.
Children, families, and communities. Y'all heard that? Let us know how we can find you, Dr. Malik Smalls, while we wrap up.
You can find me on Instagram, Dr._Malik Andrew Small. Yeah.
Okay. Y'all already heard it. Go follow him. He's doing amazing work. I love the quotes and everything that he's rolling out. And I'm excited for what we're going to stay connected. Dr. Malik Smalls, again, thank you for volunteering, sharing space with us. And I know that I have no doubt that this chat will bless others who maybe.
I also got to shout out Principal Ra out there in Compton. If you haven't gotten his new book, Revolutionary Teaching, I just got my box in the mail. Go out and get that book. Let's support Black businesses. Let's support those principals, those teachers, those educators who are on the front line of leading with love.
I love it. Principal Ra's book. I believe it's The Revolutionary Educator, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Revolutionary Educator. Make sure you go and tap in. So you got two. We share two books with you: Principal Ra, Revolutionary Educator, and Akhtar, Westside Heights Principal,
and everything that OSG is doing.
And everything that OSG is doing. Y'all already heard. OSG is doing some pretty amazing things, and the people who are part of it. I'm just inspired by the movement. So thank you again, Dr. Smalls. You're the bomb. Listen, enjoy your wine. Hang around for me for a moment. I'm going to go ahead and close out this YouTube.
Okay.
Please make sure you follow us, subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribed at the Pavone Firm. Go also follow the OSG community, subscribe to their channel. There is some really empowering, dope individuals who are sharing information that is, and gems that are really transforming leaders and their practice. So make sure you go follow and subscribe. And enjoy your day, you all. Be well. Our next live leadership chat is this Friday with Dr. Brian Perkins. He is the Director of Urban School Leadership at Columbia University. And if you are a principal candidate interviewing to become a school principal, we're going to be unpacking the 5 strategic questions you absolutely must ask in your interview. So make sure to tap in. Dr. Smalls, you'rethebomb.com. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Noemi.
All right, hang tight. Let me just.